I did not feel comfortable talking to my mom like I got hair down there.
Right. I
Like that
mean,
wasn't a
unless
conversation
you
I
have
wanted.
that, yeah, you have that kind of conversation, that kind of relationship with your parent. I can't see
No.
that happening. And
Now, if I had a dad, and if my dad was at home, and
mhm.
I did have a dad, I knew who my dad was and all that stuff. They just were divorced. If my dad was at home, that would have been a conversation I would have brought to him. But I didn't want to talk about that with my mom.
Right.
What's up, everybody? You've tuned in to Just Drawz, the podcast that explores hot topics and various experiences among same-gender loving Black men. In each episode, we offer raw, vulnerable, and stripped-down perspectives to give voice to our frequently overlooked population. Here, we don't just scratch the surface, we dive deep, peeling back the layers of our experiences as well as heteronormative stereotypes. Let's get into this week's episode.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Just Drawz, the podcast where we keep it vulnerable,
Raw, stripped down,
and authentically just
us.
us. I am Jeff.
And I'm your boy Darius, aka DMC.
So grab a drink
Or keep your hands on the wheel.
readjust your support, and
let's
get into it. All right, so tonight we're coming from your cousin's basement.
Okay. It's a lot of wood paneling down there.
Yeah, it can be. It depends on the cousin and the uncle and aunt situation with that.
Yeah, because when you said cousin and basement, that's the first thing I thought about is my country cousins. So,
oh yeah, because in the country they probably did have the wood paneling and
a kerosene heater.
Mm-hmm. No sheetrock.
No, and wood fork spoon on the wall.
Right. Mm-hmm. Oh yes, definitely the wood fork. We had that going on too. Mm-hmm. But I don't think my mom didn't put that one up. She kind of left it hanging down like as a table decoration.
The wooden one?
Yes.
Was it the real big one though?
It wasn't real big, but I would say, I mean, it was clearly bigger. I'd say it was probably about like this big, maybe.
Okay. No, I'm talking about the really big ones, the ones that like that crossed on the right above the fireplace.
Oh no, we didn't have that. Mm-mm.
Okay, then gotcha.
No.
Oh, cool.
All right. So how was your week?
It's been a lot. I am up to my eyeballs in grading, and so I am trying to get all of that shit done so that I can actually kind of relax a little bit more. I haven't been able to do some of my leisure reading that I like to do. So, because I am reading semi-bad work. So, you know.
And that's getting into the way of
that is
what you want to.
In the way of everything that I want to do, because at the end of the night, I'm usually like, good night, everybody. No, I don't want to talk to anybody. No, we're going to bed. So
sounded real TLC-ish right there.
Okay, it is. And what about you? How's your week?
My week was pretty good. Went to a friend's birthday kickback this weekend, and then went to a beer barbecue bourbon thing. That was fun.
Got to sample barbecue bourbon.
Yes. I can't remember. I don't know what order the festival presented that in, but those were the things served, was beer, barbecue, and bourbon. It was pretty good. Got to taste a lot of different things. Bourbon wise, I think that's probably going to be my favorite dark liquor type of thing. But yeah, it was good. Got to taste ostrich, which was different. Probably wasn't the best prepared ostrich, but it was okay. It could have.
Did it taste like chicken?
It did not. It was very. It tasted like tough dark meat turkey. It wasn't gamey, but it was not tender at all. At least not the piece that I got. So I would give it another chance. Just maybe a different preparation.
Mm-hmm. Were
Yeah.
any of the events that you just mentioned naked/nude?
No, they were not.
Okay.
I do not really do a lot of naked things all the time, but that is
I
one of the
just wanted to
things.
ask. Just wanted to
Uh,
ask. Yeah.
yeah, I don't think they have nude, naked bourbon beer festivals at Atlantic Station.
That you know of yet.
I'm
Yet.
pretty sure they don't at all.
Okay. All right.
All right, all right. So let's get into the show. So why are we coming from your cousin's basement?
I have no
Yeah.
idea.
So I think that's because with tonight's subject, this is where a lot of it'll tie in, I feel. All right. So everyone has a first time story. Sometimes you've planned your first time. Sometimes it just happened. Some of your first times have been amazing, magical experiences. This episode, we're going to talk about what shaped our first sexual experiences and some of the aftermaths that came after that, and some questions and things that may have entered our minds after that time. So buckle up. We're about to strip down and keep it vulnerable and do what we do here
Let's
at
go.
Just Drawz.
Let's do it. Let's get it.
So I remember something crazy that I heard as a kid regarding, sex. And it seemed like I knew it was something that you weren't supposed to do until you were older. But I don't know. When you were in school, did you ever have like kids that would like run around and like go into the bushes? Did you ever hear about like that?
Yes, I'd like to think that, but I mean, it wasn't bushes more so as it was bleachers.
Oh, okay.
Like, we had the risers and the bleachers and like the gym, and whenever we would have gym and stuff like that. So you would hear about people going under the bleachers, and then you would, have people who had the nickname of Bleacher Creature,
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah. Then you knew what that was, but
Okay. So yeah, we didn't have bleachers at my school, and this was in elementary school. So I don't know if you've jumped ahead a couple of years from me.
No,
but I remember kids.
We've always had that.
Okay, yeah, we didn't have bleachers at the gym at my elementary school, so I guess we were just broke.
Well, according to Anjali, I'm rich, and I've been rich, so clearly that was what it was. But go ahead. At the country club,
right. Yeah, so yeah, I would hear like going into the bushes, and I thought that meant that people were actually doing stuff at that time, but they weren't. It was just basically, from what I understand, because I was an innocent kid, I didn't do such things. But yeah, the bushes to me was where people kind of like would go get felt on and all of that stuff, and then like run out and kiss too. Those are like innocent kid things that people would be doing at that time, but I wasn't participating in any of that.
Yeah, they used to do some of that stuff on the bus.
Oh yeah, I heard about that too. Like trying to get into the back of the bus to do all of that. Well, was it the back?
Right. Not necessarily when when I was in school. It was
Okay.
Whatever. It would be towards the back, but it wouldn't necessarily be the very back of the bus. But sometimes you would have that. You'd have people, in the very back of the bus that were back there doing things, and you would go, okay, yeah, some stuff is happening back there. But things, yeah, various things. Now, what those various things were, I'm not sure all of what they were, but I can imagine what some of them were, because some of them came with smells. So,
ooh. Yeah, I'm good on that.
Exactly.
Say no more. So do you remember how you first learned about sex?
Probably with television and some movies, but I can say when I was younger that I didn't necessarily know the particulars about sex. I just knew what we were kind of allowed to see, which was everything kind of leading up to the act.
Right.
So you knew I paid attention to, or I saw the kissing, I saw the heavy petting, and then the pulling off of clothes. And then, usually there would be a pan out, the camera would pan out, and you wouldn't see much else. And then you'd see them laying in bed together, smoking a cigarette or, looking at each other like
Right.
good morning,
Longingly.
tiger. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Right. The HBO or TV show version of it. Because same here. Like, I really did not know much about it other than what I would see on TV. And we had HBO cable. So, I knew what I wasn't supposed to be watching. But as a latchkey kid,
Right.
I would watch whatever I wanted to watch when I wanted to watch it. Because it wasn't like, parental controls were on the television or anything like that, like it is now. I had very little restrictions when it came to stuff like that. So I would see things, but watching a teenage comedy from the 80s, like a Porky's or what's the other one that was really good?
Revenge of the
Bachelor
Nerds.
Party, Revenge of the Nerds. Like, you kind of have an idea of what it was, but not really knowing the ins and outs. And I didn't really get that literal ins and outs.
Literal ins and outs. Yeah, exactly. The literal ins and outs. Yeah.
Right. Did not get into any of that until, teenage time. I remember people talking about it, but not really knowing any more than what I knew. Because, we're kids. We're in elementary school, 10, 11, 12. Like, we didn't really have the vocabulary, I would say, to kind of like say what was going on. So it's just kind of like you assumed things and you thought of it as a real simplistic type of thing. It's like man, woman, they get naked, and that's pretty much the ins and outs of that. Like, that's the beginning and the end. You didn't really get into the detail of this goes here and that goes there.
Yeah, we didn't. I mean, and I'm not even sure that we knew that word sex, that wasn't something that we were like, okay, this is what it is. It was, okay, well, they're doing it.
Yes, it would be it. It wasn't necessarily be sex. It would just be they doing stuff.
They're doing it. Yeah, it's it.
Doing it. Did you do it?
Right. y'all was doing it.
Right. Doing it and doing it.
And doing it well. Yeah. So did you ever have any like myths that you believed that were related to sex when you were younger?
One of the things that kind of stood out for me was I remember once kind of knew what sex was, that hearing, virginity was a big deal. And so one of the things that I heard was if she bled, then that means that it was her first time. And if she didn't bleed, then that means that she had been having sex before.
During sex?
Yes, during sex. And the reasoning behind that I learned was because of, girls having hymens. And that would be your, I guess, check to see if someone's a virgin or not, was if their hymen was intact. And so if the hymen was destroyed during that process of having sex and she bled, that meant that she was a virgin. But you know better now. I know better now that does not indicate someone's virtue.
Have you ever heard? I remember hearing, and this is probably not super long ago, but somebody close to me, I'll say it like that. I don't know if I want to put exactly who it was out there, but this was a family member who said to me that he told me this is probably maybe about a decade, 2 decades ago, something like that. So not super long ago, that he knocked some girl's period off. Now, what the fuck that means, I have no idea. But have you ever heard anything like that?
I've never heard that.
I haven't either. Yeah. And I was like, how do you knock it off? Like what? Yeah. Knock it on,
happened?
Like knock it off. I don't know. And I still don't even understand what that means. Like, you knocked it off. Like
does that mean that she started menstruation?
I don't know.
Her cycle started while they were having. Did he do it and stop it?
I don't know.
See, yeah, I'm glad that's not my issue.
Yeah, just dumb. Yeah, just dumb. Yeah, and I was like, okay, what? Like, what are you talking about here? And how does this happen? So like me and my older sister used to laugh about it
Mm-hmm.
because it was so far-fetched. It was so ridiculous that it was like, what do you mean? Like what are you talking about? And you know what? We're being vulnerable here. So it was one of my siblings. It was one of my brothers who said this. Like, and I was just like, okay, I don't get it, sir. And what does this mean? But I didn't want to ask any questions
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't know how much farther the stupidity was
Oh,
going to go
okay.
and what else I was going to hear. So I said, let me just stop with that.
Yeah, you said you were just going to keep it
I'm gonna be
keep it
dumb.
real. Yeah,
I'm gonna
be
be
dumb
dumb.
about it and
I'm
just
gonna
be
just be
like, yeah.
dumb.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah,
Wow.
sure.
That's
Got it.
awesome.
Got it. Understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
Great job. Okay.
Slowly back away.
Exactly. Yeah. Homer Simpson in the bushes.
Right.
Exactly.
Oh.
So I guess that might be the weirdest thing that I've heard, but
Okay.
again, I don't know how that's medically possible or scientifically
Yeah,
possible.
I'm still thinking there's so many different ways that could go. So I don't want to
There you
confuse
go.
my brain anymore.
There
But
you go.
maybe
That's it.
I'll pop it into Google
You'll knock
later.
it off. You'll
Yeah,
knock
I'll
it
knock
off.
that into Google and
You'll
see
knock
what
the
happens.
mm-hmm. Good luck. Good luck. Do you so having said that and talking about somebody's first time and knocking off periods and hymens intact, do you remember, we're getting up there in age, do you remember your first sexual experience or experiences?
I do, and there's different ways that I can answer this question. So I guess I'll start with this. Not necessarily losing my virginity, but I'll take it back to when I was a teenager, 14. I was hanging out at my sister's apartment, and there was this girl. She used to always be around, blah blah blah, and she was friends with my sister. Um, Her mom was friends with my sister rather, and so we used to
Wait a
hang
minute.
out and talk.
Wait. Go back. Okay, so there was a girl.
Mhm.
The girl's mother
Yes,
was
her mom
friends
was friends with
with
my
your
sister.
sister. Okay,
Hmm.
so not the girl.
Yeah, this is the girl. I'm talking about the girl.
No, that's what I'm saying. The girl wasn't friends with your sister.
She wasn't well, she knew her, but just
Okay.
because that was her friend's daughter. So,
Okay.
but
Okay.
we're talking about my sister's friend's daughter.
Yeah.
So this
Because your
girl,
sister is how much older than you?
she's 14 years older than
Okay.
me.
Right. Okay. Got it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
now that puts things into perspective a little bit more for not only the viewers and listeners,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah, yeah. So this girl, she was like 14 too.
okay.
So at this time, I was over there visiting and watching my nieces and nephew, and I've been over there for a couple of days. Well, I'm not gonna say months because she's been over there, and I knew this girl, and so I was so familiar with her, there was no problem if she was like at the house or whatever. So I'm babysitting. My brother-in-law was gone, my sister was gone, and I had the kids in the house with me. So we just started talking, blah blah blah, watch the TV, listen to music, this and the other, and so eventually she started coming on to me, and
So what did that look like?
I don't really want to get into details about it. I'll just kind of
Okay.
do this. She started coming on to me. And she basically, was trying to have sex with me. I rejected her advances. And most likely not even most likely, the reason why is because my niece and nephew were there. And they're toddlers at the time. And they were old enough to report back. So that's one thing. But two, I didn't know what was happening, and I didn't want to be in a situation where that's going on. I've got these kids here. And if, say, my sister or brother-in-law came in the middle of whatever it was we were doing, I would not really have anything to say about it. Like, I'd be like, oh, whoops. And I know most guys would have been like, oh, yeah, I'm taking advantage of this. Or someone probably watching and be like, yeah, he knew he was gay in, that type of thing. And that really wasn't it. It was really because of my niece and nephew being at the house. That was my first priority. So I guess that would make me a better dad than some people, but whatever.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So that would have been my first sexual opportunity. So I will say that she did take off her shirt. And she did, press herself up on me and all of that. And she, basically it was pushed me down and was on top of me. But I restrained myself as far as strength wise, because I didn't want to hurt her. I was bigger than her. So I didn't want it to end up being a situation where she could say that I hurt her. So I had to be kind of like very careful about how it was going to go. So I wanted to make sure that at the end of the day, like, I was not going to be the person that got in trouble because, as I told you before, I did not like getting in trouble. And even to this day, I still don't like getting in trouble or having to hear anything with my parent, my mom, because I'll never hear the end of anything that I do. Right. And I hear things still today that we may get into later on in this podcast. But yeah, so that would have been my first sexual experience. First male female interaction was her breast on my face.
Okay, because I was going to say, if she was 14, had she had?
Oh yeah, she had. Yeah, she had boobs. I mean, she had 14-year-old.
Okay,
what you would expect, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I remember mine, and don't judge viewers and listeners, but I was 12 when I had my first encounter with a female who lived in my neighborhood, and it was horrible. It was absolutely the worst. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. It was just based on the things that I had kind of learned in school and what I potentially saw on TV, because I hadn't really seen like porn at that point. So I wasn't familiar with, again, the specifics and the logistics surrounding, sex. I just knew that it was like, okay, you kissed and you heavy petted, and the more intense the heavy petting was, it was almost like the sex was going to be that, whatever the sex was. But yeah, I didn't know what it was. I mean, I knew I was erect, I knew I was hard, and we actually proceeded with things, but I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know, what a stroke necessarily was. I didn't know, how to feel, how to make her feel, like things of that nature. And it was so bad that like I didn't think about having sex or engaging in anything like that for another 4 years. For me, I was just like, okay, this was horrible. And it wasn't that she said it was horrible necessarily. I just am that much of a perfectionist that I was like, okay, if this didn't go right, now I have to step back and critically analyze what didn't go right, how I need to fix this, what's going to happen the next time, etc. So it was just like, nah, this is not it. I'm not going to do anything else. So I didn't really engage in another sexual experience until I was like 16. So I was like in high school by then. So, I definitely had more references and I had more things that I could draw from, so that I was like, okay, I'm going to emulate this until I understand how I need to work or understand how this person's, body works. So
were you looking at it after that encounter, like the next time I'm going to focus on pleasuring this person?
That didn't come until I understood the entirety of the act.
Okay. Got it.
Then it was, okay, now this is what I want to do, and this is how I want this, and this is the litmus test of whether it's good or not, if the other person is pleased. And to be honest with you, that still carries with me now. Like that's kind of how I engage sexually now, is I like to make sure that I'm pleasing the other person. And so if the other person is pleased, then I know that I've done a good job, or I know that it's good. If the other person is not pleased, even though I may be pleased, I still feel like I didn't deliver. And
Uh-huh.
so, I'm kind of in my head sometimes about that. Like, okay, if and when this happens the next time, here's where this is. Okay, I understand how I need to maneuver.
So you're course correcting
I
during the
am. I'm
process.
always in course correction mode. And so even during the act, I'm in course correction. I'm like, okay, this worked. Okay. Cause I get into this exploratory kind of thing. And so I start testing things out sometimes, and I pay attention to the reaction. And if it's a positive reaction, and I go, okay, this is interesting. This person's spot is this, or this person has this, place or this specific area that I can kind of focus in on. So yeah, so
Okay.
it's always course correction for me.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So shifting gears,
Mm-hmm.
do you remember what your first same-sex
Mm-hmm.
sexual experience was like?
I do. It actually wasn't too long ago. I didn't start dating guys or really being interested in guys and entertaining guys until I was in my 30s. So I was a very late bloomer. Now I've caught up to a lot of people since then. I'm not afraid to say that, or not ashamed to say that. But yeah, I was in my 30s. I believe I was 34
Uh-huh.
when I actually had my first same-sex kiss, and when I had my first same-sex sexual encounter. And the first, this was all in the same year. So the different points of the year. So like my first kiss was like earlier that year, like in maybe like a March or something like that. And then I got my dick sucked for the first time by a guy in like October, somewhere thereabout. And then
Okay.
I actually was dating somebody for right around that time, or I had just kind of met somebody. And so me and that person attempted to have sex. Uh, that that didn't go as well because the other person hadn't had sex in a while, and it just, things weren't lining up, like things weren't opening up, things were, so it was like, okay, well, okay, it's fine. But we were dating, so it didn't bother me that
Uh-huh.
that happened. But yeah, that was in my 30s. Like I said, 34, maybe 35, somewhere thereabouts. What
Okay.
about you? I know that you
Um,
you were probably a little bit earlier than that.
yeah, yeah. I was still an undergrad, so I was
Mm-hmm.
about 21. Um, and before I actually had any type of full on to completion same
Mm-hmm.
sex interaction. So I had a extremely out and proud roommate at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
he had a friend that used to come by the room, this, that, and the other. Um, and I don't know, I had a car at the time, and at the time I was going to work, so I would be in and out, so I wouldn't always be in my room. But he knew I had a car, and can't remember, one night I said I was about to go get something to eat, and he wanted to tag along.
Mm-hmm.
So we get in the car, and he started asking me all of these questions about, well, have you ever thought about doing this with a dude? Have you ever thought about doing that? And I was like, kind of, sort of, yeah, maybe, sure. Um, and we get the food. I drop him off at his dorm. I go back to my room, and I eat my food, and then he like calls me like later on, and then he was like, "Well, I'm in this dorm, and I'm in this room. I'm an RA, so I have my own room, so we'll have privacy if you want to do something." So I thought about it, went over. We ended up messing around. So we kissed. Uh, I sucked him. He sucked me.
Mm-hmm.
We nutted and hung out for a little bit
Ta-da.
after
Okay.
that. And went back to the room, and that was it. I remember we talked some more like later the next day, and we started just hanging out more, and eventually we ended up dating.
Okay.
And so that lasted for about 5, maybe 4. Well, I take that back. I don't even think it lasted that long. I know it lasted long enough where some holiday had came by, but it wasn't like a Christmas or a Thanksgiving. So I know it was spring. So it probably would have been like spring break, maybe not really a holiday, but by the end of the semester or that summer, I think we were no more, but it was an interesting experience to say the least. Cause that was like my first non high school relationship. So there was still a lot of learning that I had to go through, but,
so did you have any relationship? Did you have a relationship in high school, like a same-sex relationship?
No. I dated this girl for a little bit when I was in high school, but nothing serious. I wouldn't say it was serious. I still ended up going to the prom dateless by the time senior year rolled around. So, yeah.
No, I know I didn't go to the prom. I didn't go to junior prom. I did go to senior prom. I didn't see the point in going to junior prom, but no, I went to senior prom actually with a good friend of mine that I had known for a long time. But we didn't we didn't have sex or anything after the prom. We went to a friend's house, and like
that's so straight coded.
It is okay. We didn't do any of that. We went to a friend's house that everybody like that went to prom, like that friend's mom made us all breakfast, like because we didn't get out of prom till like after midnight, and so we had like this breakfast at her house, and they stayed up all night. We were watching movies and listening to music and stuff like that. So it was dope. Just like a bunch of people from the prom, we all changed clothes and stuff like that. So it was like a little after party situation. So that was fun. I know I didn't get home till about 6 that morning after prom. So I came in, my parents were going to church when I walked in the door. So, but they knew where I was. So it wasn't, a situation. So no, I didn't have sex after prom.
Yeah. I remember at that age, I thought it was so stupid that people would why would you wait to have sex on prom night? Like you can have sex anytime. Like why are you doing this? Like that never made sense to me. Like why?
Special. It was a special time.
It was stupid. Like kids,
it's almost like wedding, almost
teenagers.
Like, okay, I'm getting so dressed up. And
if you're going to have sex, you don't have to wait to prom night to do that.
just wait till your mom leaves the house. Yeah, for work, and then invite them over and boom, pow, ta-dow.
Yeah, stupid. I will. I don't mind dying on that hill. I think that prom night sex is just stupid, and yeah.
Did you have any expectations when you had sex? Going back to that question about first time, did you have any expectations?
I did not know what to expect other than the fact that, okay. So I would say that I expected to have an orgasm just because by this time, that was something that was a lot more frequent happening with me, either, by myself. So that was going to be the main thing. Now, how it was going to happen, I don't know. Like I didn't really plan it or anything. Now, full disclosure, prior to that night, I had a little bit of some saved, gay images on my computer. So when my roommate was gone, like that was my porn. Like I was jacking off to that. And I had straight porn that I would watch too, because I had a friend group that, we would have like a tape of straight porn that was kind of like float around us. So, like we would go to the bookstore and get something from the bargain bin and this, that, and the other. And just watch that. Now they were watching it for the girls. I was watching it for the dudes and the asses.
Okay.
So, but tapes had a lot going on for them. But I wasn't expecting it to be like some big magical thing. And besides, this wasn't like a full on, have sex thing. We didn't have sex until probably maybe a month later. That first time, it was like, oh, wow, this is cool. Like, I enjoyed it like a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and it felt
Mm-hmm.
way more natural to me than when I had sex with women or messed around with girls before that. So, no gold star gaze on this podcast.
No, not at all.
But yeah, yeah. So my expectations were just kind of real basic. Like, it wasn't like, oh, it's going to be this, or I'm going to do that. I'm going to experience all of these different things. It was just kind of like, okay, we'll just see where it goes. So I wasn't expecting it to go any further than what it did. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I guess you could say it was like right what I wanted it to be.
Okay. I didn't know, again, what the hell I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So there were no expectations. There was nothing I was necessarily looking forward to because I didn't have anything to compare it to.
Right.
I don't know that I knew what an orgasm was other than when you watch movies and you see, you know, women, doing a whole bunch of like, and I didn't know. I just thought that was okay. Well, she's enjoying it, and she's enjoying it because it's a lot of heavy petting, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and people being out of breath, So I was like, okay, I don't know, but yeah, I don't know that I knew what an orgasm felt like. I didn't know if I knew what that was. The more I think about it, I was like, I don't know. No idea. No frame of reference.
But with movies and TV, especially during that mid 80s to mid 90s time, pleasure was always male focused. It wasn't
Right.
focused on women. So, there's a lot of women that never really got orgasms. A lot of those baby boomers didn't get that until later on because they weren't allowed to. It was like once the man finished his business, that was pretty much a wrap for the
He
whole
just got on
sexually
top of you and did his
and did his
business.
business like he was going to the
Mm-hmm.
bathroom or something,
Mm-hmm.
so they were not getting the pleasure that they were capable of experiencing until later in life, or they learned how to pleasure themselves and would
Mm-hmm.
know how to direct a man on how to do that.
Yeah. Again, no frame of reference for me. So I didn't know. I
Yeah.
just, you hear the sounds and go, all right, well, yay,
Yeah. So with that,
Mm-hmm.
after you had your first sexual experience with another person, another male, how did that feel for you? Like, did you feel any type of anxiety? Did it clarify anything for you?
I don't, those questions are really like, they're really causing me to kind of go back in that moment. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
that I actually felt anything at that point. Like I knew it was going to happen, and it happened. And I was just like, okay, cool. Because at that point, by the time I had my first male experience, I had already experienced women. Like
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't dating women up until, excuse me, I wasn't dating men up until like 2013. So everything prior to that had been with females. And so I had already experienced a lot of things. And so it felt like business as usual, just with a different partner,
Okay.
if that makes sense. So the fellatio didn't feel any different necessarily. When I actually had sex, it was okay. This hasn't happened before, so
Okay.
okay, let me figure out how this is supposed to work, and all of that. But again, I was an adult at that point, so I was big and grown at that point. I was living on my own and like all of that, so there wasn't a lot of anxiety there. all of
Okay.
that anxiety had gotten worked out when I was dating and having sex with women.
Okay. Got it. Got it. So for me, going back to that faithful time in 1996 ish,
Mm-hmm.
um, I can say, after we had that first experience, that I was going through a lot mentally because it was kind of like, um, after I left his room, like I started thinking, did anyone see me leave his room?
Right.
Did that guy see me? Are they looking at me weird? Like I was mentally going through it, even though I had
Mm-hmm.
just had an awesome time, but the reality set in, and then I started to get like real nervous
Mm-hmm.
because it was kind of like, okay, what does this mean? Did this just happen? Yes, it did. And so now it's kind of like, now what do I do? You know?
Mm-hmm.
And it just felt there was some relief, I guess, after the release, because it
The
felt
relief after the
so
release. Got it.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Because it felt like the natural thing. Like, okay, like all of the stuff that I heard about, you know, oh, your lips going to rot off, or this is bad. So all those things that I thought
You had
that,
heard that?
yeah, I think I mentioned on another episode, like first season, that someone had said that your lips would rot off when I was a kid. It was a crazy thing about,
Wow.
same sex kissing, or you'd grow horns and all of that stuff. All of that stuff. That's what I'm referring to.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah, all of those things that was clearly confirmed to be a lie, but it clarified a lot for me because
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh yeah, I was questioning myself before, but this for me defined my path and put me on where I'm at now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, for me, I did feel a lot of anxiousness after that first time, but it felt natural also. So we do a wonder on kids. When we try to take them off a path that they aren't naturally going to
Mm-hmm.
be on, trying to convert or make people be um, a sexual orientation that they are not.
And
Uh,
using scare tactics
exactly.
to sway them away from what's allegedly going to happen, which I never got any of those kind of scare tactics. It
And
was more
shame.
ridicule. Yeah, it was more
Yeah,
ridicule
that
for
too.
me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never, yeah,
So,
never got that.
so that leads me to this. So did you ever get the talk from one of
Hell
your
no.
parents or anything? So you didn't either?
Hell no. Not a talk, not a look, not a none of that. Like none of that shit. Most of what I learned as far as what they call the birds and the bees, I
Hmm.
learned through school. Fifth grade for us was the point where we learned about sexual organs and then sexual reproduction. And that's where I got all of that from. So it was all right. I knew the parts of the female anatomy. I knew the parts of the male anatomy. So I aced all of that.
Right.
Whenever we took the test on that, I was like, oh, I know exactly what that is. I know what that is. I know how this works. I know what this is. So that was easy. But no, I never got that from my parents. I never even really got the don't do certain things with, like, I never even got the precautionary things, like don't bring anybody over here, don't bring girls over here to the house while I'm not here, or don't, like, I never really even got any of that, even
Okay.
though my mother used to, like, my mother and I got into like a real kind of thing, and it still pisses me off to this day that she did this, but I had a friend come by the house one day. I used to leave school, and we used to have this thing called Explorers in North Carolina, and it was like a seminar, like these seminars that we would have every Tuesday, and they were catered or specified around the field of interest that you wanted to go into. So
Okay.
I wanted to be a lawyer. And so we had a law explorers group. So every Tuesday I would get out of school. This is high school. So I would get out of school at 2:15. I'd get home by about 2:30, and my grandmother would come and pick me up because my mom was at work. So my grandmother would come and pick me up right at about 2:45 because we had to be at Explorers by 3:15. And so there was a girl that lived in the neighborhood, not the same girl that I had sex with, but another girl that went to high school with me. And she came to the house with me, and I said, okay, hey, we're going to ride over to the Explorers together since we live in the same neighborhood. So it wasn't a big deal. And so I went in the house just to put my bag down. And so she came into the house. She didn't even come really into the house. We had like an opening area, kind of like where our fireplace used to sit right when you walk into the house. So she just waited right there. I went and put my bag down. I grabbed my notebook and everything. And by that time, we're coming out of the house and my grandmother's coming down the street. And so my grandmother picked us up, took us to Explorers. She picked us back up later and dropped her off. And then on her way to drop me back off at the house, she said, well, I don't think your mom wants people to be in the house while she's not there. And I said, well, it's not a big deal. I said, she just stepped in for a second. I went to put my bag down. That was it. We literally had just gotten home when you came down the street. She mentioned it to my mom. And so my mom, instead of having a conversation with me, she just took my key.
Wow.
Still pisses me off to this day. Just took my key. And then so I'm thinking I lost my key. And I didn't want to tell her I lost my key because then that would have been a whole, well, you're not responsible. So now you're going to have to, go over here to your grandmother's house or whatever after school and like all of that. And I was like, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm too old for this. So, I would break in the house when I got home thinking that, okay, she's not going to know. And she never said anything. And then finally, my great grandmother had to tell me, yeah, your mom's got that key. And I was like, all because you don't want to have a conversation with me. So, if there's any parents out there, like have a conversation with your child, like for real, this is, it's bullshit to try to skirt things under the rug, especially now.
Yeah. Or at least if you can't have the conversation, have someone else do it.
Right.
Because I didn't get to talk either. Like I learned, and I think I may have talked about this on a previous episode, but I learned all of the things that I knew about sex from those pamphlets. I don't know. Some of y'all may remember the pamphlets. They were like green or teal and red and blue. And they had like the people with the figures, and they were all like white outline drawings and looked like little bubble people. But anyway, those things like explained all of these different sex topics. They talked about diseases. They talked about pregnancy. They talked about pregnancy prevention and IUDs and condoms and all of that stuff. So I learned from books what sex was. And by the time my mom actually had asked someone to talk to me about it, I knew all the stuff. Like I was already, growing pubic hairs and all that good stuff. Like by that time, I would have known all that stuff. And what happened was, I remember when I first started developing, I did not feel comfortable talking to my mom like I got hair down there.
Right.
Like that wasn't a conversation
you
I
have
wanted.
that, you have that kind of conversation, that kind of relationship with your parent. I can't see
No.
that happening. And
Now, if I had a dad, and if my dad was at home, and I did have a dad, I knew who my dad was and all that stuff, they just were divorced. If my dad was at home, that would have been a conversation I would have brought to him. But I didn't want to talk about that with my mom.
right.
And I would have thought that, she would have known that, all right, yeah, it's about this time. He's probably maturing into a man now. I need to start having this conversation. She just never did it. And I don't fault her for it. I just wish that I could have had at least a sounding board, someone that I could have talked to, versus me having to be the geeky nerd person and do all the research on my own.
Yeah, I had to do the same thing. I mean, I had to research on my own when I wanted to research those things. But I was pretty observant, and so there were things that I would watch other people do. And I remember the first porn I ever watched was given to me by a young lady in high school, and she was like, "Here, take this home and watch this," And I was like, "Okay." So, I was like, "You want me to bring it back tomorrow?" And so she was like, "Yeah." So I would come home, and nobody would be home until about 5 o'clock. So I popped the tape in, and I was just like, "Oh, okay, interesting. All right." I'd heard about porn. I'd heard about some of the more popular older titles, but I had never seen anything like that. And I think the first one I saw was The Devil in Mrs. Jones.
Oh wow, you remember the title?
I remember the title. Yep.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
do. I do. I
Not
remember where
me.
I was in the living room when I was watching it, and I was like, "Oh, okay, dope. All right."
Man.
So this
Wow.
and all right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that wasn't my experience at all. I remember there was a group of us boys, and this was around junior high time, and there was a tape that we were floating around each other, that we were watching.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first time we watched it at one of the guys' house that lived like down the hill from where I lived. So we was all at his house. It was like maybe five of us. The tape got popped in and we're all like, those that had not seen it were just like, oh my God, wow. And just looking at it in awe. And so then, the conversation got to, well, I want to use the tape. I want to see the tape. And so the tape got passed around. And someone, not me, left the tape in the VCR at their house. And their mom found out, and all of us got called and connected because, back in the late 80s, parents actually knew each other.
Right.
And the village that was raising the child, was gathered up. So we were all rounded up and, asked about the tape and whose tape it was and why we were watching it and all this other stuff. And all that time, at least for me, I still never got to talk. So here I am, watching this tape, watching what was happening with these women and these men, and no one still explained to me what was going on. I knew what was going on, but I never really got anything until probably maybe a month and a half after that whole incident happened. And I think, my mom had cooled down enough to, start having that conversation. But I was like, I know all this now. Like, I'm not having it, but thanks.
Right.
Yeah. So
I mean, and HBO kind of helped too before, if we had HBO after dark, so after 11 o'clock on certain nights before HBO I think HBO at that time used to still go off at a certain time. Like it would run up until a certain time and then you would get the color bars and all of that, or that could have just been regular TV.
I think it did stop at a certain time, and then then it started. If you're depending on what cable system you were on, it would switch over to either another channel or it'd just be bars until like early the next morning.
Right. Yeah. So I remember the HBO after dark stuff. So sometimes I would be awake to be able to watch that. And so I could see certain things there. But I mean, you never really saw again, it wasn't hardcore or it wasn't distinct. It wasn't, explicit. It was, you might see, upper body on the women and or you might see ass, but you won't see, Dick and Jane,
Yeah.
So, but I remember one time there was a scene on a show and it was a lesbian scene and it was like the two girls were naked and they both laid down in bed next to each other and crazily enough, and this is going to be so dumb, but like one girl just like laid this belt across the other girl's body and then the scene ended. And I was just like, is that how lesbians have sex? They just, one of them just lays a belt across the other one and ta-da.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. I vividly remember that. And I remember going, okay.
Yeah, seems very anticlimactic.
Yeah, and it was the next morning. Yeah, and then it was, they went about their day. So I was like, okay, this is dumb. But
So instead of scissoring, they had belting.
belting, yes, let's belt it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So that tape situation was interesting, and I still to this day will hear about that situation because my one of my mom's co-workers, her son was in the tape ring as well with us, and she'll ask me about it too. Tape gate, and she, yeah, I remember when you and Redacted used to have that tape walking around and blah 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 blah. Why were y'all watching that tape? And that's what boys do. That's my answer to that question now. That's what boys do.
What do you expect?
Right. That's what boys do. Once again, your voice got a little long-winded, but stay tuned. We've got a clip of what's coming up next.
How do you feel about, you said something that triggered something for me. How do you feel when people say, when you quote, come out to someone and they say, well, I still love you?
Maybe people say that because they feel like they need to reassure you that they still love you regardless. Or it could be that, I love you as an individual. I don't like or approve of what you do. There's different ways that you could interpret that. And I don't think the only way to kind of like get any clarity on it is to ask the person, like, what do you mean when you say that to me?
Yeah. And I don't know that I haven't gotten that with the people that I have told about my sexuality. The people I've actually shared it with haven't said, well, I still love you. And I'm glad they haven't, because honestly, the older I've gotten and the older, the more I used to hear it, it used to piss me off, because it was like, well, wait a minute, like, I didn't do anything wrong. Right. Like, but I didn't do anything wrong for you to say that I still love you. Like, for me, that's what that sounds like. Okay, you did something, but I still love you.
I had a variety of things. I've had lots of different experiences, but I feel like I would have had more experiences with other people. And I kind of like cut some people off that I probably would not have now. Just because I would cut people off because I didn't think that, that person isn't masculine enough for me. Or I would think, that person, I don't like their body that much. So, I would have given myself a little bit more variety in my partners instead of only being fixated on a certain look for a long time before I started moving into other of my likes or finding other people attractive.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Now be sure to like, share, and follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, and Spotify at Just Drawz. That's JUSTDRAWZ. Until next time,